China and Israel have tens of billions of dollars in trade, huge Chinese investment in Israeli infrastructure. It's a historical friendship with the Jewish people, according to China's new ambassador to Israel. According to the Israeli Prime Minister, it's a marriage made in heaven. So, sounds like China's on Team Israel, right?
Teamwork, yes!
Except China refused to condemn Hamas's brutal attack against Israel.
Hey, that's not right.
And just a week after the attack, China was bashing Israel's military response and demanding a ceasefire without mentioning the Israelis held by Hamas in Gaza. China even hosted a summit to legitimize Hamas. So, Team Palestine, right?
We were supposed to be on the same team.
Well, in this video, we're going to explore the complicated buddy triangle of China, Israel, and the Palestinians, as we ask the question, whose team is China really on? The China-Israel buddy comedy started off complicated.
I've got morons on my team.
In 1949, Israel was the first country in the Middle East to recognize the newly established People's Republic of China. But the People's Republic left Israel's message of peace and love unread, taking over 40 years before China recognized Israel. China was ghosting Israel because of the Jewish state's growing friendship with China's rival, the United States. You know, the friend of my enemy is... okay, well, you get the idea. So, in the 1970s, China was sending aid to the leaders of Palestinian militant groups. Aid used to hijack planes, attack Israelis, and other Western targets. These militant groups even described China as their
Best friend!
Global politics, sixth grade drama. It can be hard to tell the difference, especially considering what happened next. Because just a few years later, China's position on Israel suddenly started shifting. Who's the best friend now, huh? What happened? Well, let's back up. China and the Soviet Union started as two communist allies, but a contest over who would lead the global communist revolution turned them into rivals, hating each other even more than they hated the United States. I know, things were so much simpler when it was the Soviet Union, China, Arabs versus the US, Europe, Israel. But the new Soviet-Chinese rivalry turned binary global politics into a triangle, with Middle East states caught in the middle. And that's when China began supporting Arab leaders who distanced themselves from the Soviet Union. The prime example? Egypt, 1979. Egypt split with the Soviet bloc and signed a peace agreement with the Jewish state. And China joined in the merriment, giving Israel a glowing endorsement.
He's actually a great guy.
From that moment on, the Chinese-Israel relationship blossomed. By the early 1980s, the two countries were trading billions of dollars worth of missiles and military tech. By 1990, Israel had become the most important supplier of advanced military technology to China. Over the next 25 years, economic ties only strengthened. We're talking tens of billions of dollars in trade every year. So, you know, go Team Israel, right? And the relationship has gotten a major boost in recent years with China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive network of Chinese-funded roads, ports, railways, and infrastructure to build stronger business ties with Europe and beyond. Israel's location between Africa, Asia, and Europe puts it right in the middle of that modern-day Silk Road. Today, Chinese construction companies are building Israeli roads, subways, and ports, which kinda makes Israel a junior partner in China's efforts to dominate the global economy. And if you're wondering how the US feels about Israel's little side fling with China,
This is not good!
and not just because one of the US's main allies is cozying up to the US's main rival. Cue the national security concerns. See, the US Navy docks ships at Israeli ports that are now right next to ports run by Chinese companies. So the US got all pissy, which left Israel in a careful balancing act between two global superpowers. An act that seemed to work and keep China squarely on Team Israel.
We can do it together! You and me! Partners!
But then, everything turned upside down.
They just kind of all turned out to be terrible people.
As the scale of Hamas's horrific attacks on October 7th became apparent, most of Israel's allies rushed to condemn Hamas. But one ally stayed silent. When Chinese officials finally did comment a week later, it was to criticize Israel's military campaign against Hamas and demand an immediate ceasefire. no mention of the kidnapped Israelis held in Gaza. And throughout the war, China continued to issue repeated condemnations of Israel's war effort in Gaza. And while China was busy delegitimizing Israel, it was simultaneously working to legitimize Hamas. China hosted talks between Palestinian factions in an attempt to boost Hamas's credibility. In a statement to the International Court of Justice, China's foreign ministry even defended the October 7th attacks, calling them just actions and an inalienable right of the Palestinians. It gets worse. With the war raging, China was working to strengthen its relationship with Israel's arch-nemesis, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the country that funds Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist groups that were firing rockets and missiles at Israel. China has been central to helping the Islamic Republic bypass international sanctions. They're the largest buyer of Iranian oil, providing a central source of income for the Islamic Republic of Iran. In turn, that income helps the Islamic Republic flaunt sanctions and continue to aid its proxy terror groups.
It could be worse.
Oh, don't worry, it gets even worse. When the Islamic Republic of Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones toward Israel in the middle of the war, China ran to Iran's defense and condemned Israel yet again. So I'm feeling China's pretty firmly on Team Palestine at this point. But maybe that's just a lot of hot air and international politics. What do the Chinese people think? Whose team are they on? Well, on Chinese language social media, anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist content has suddenly gone viral. Some major Chinese social media accounts combined the Israeli flag with the Nazi flag, and others posted photos of themselves stepping on Israeli flags. Some even called for the destruction of a museum in Shanghai commemorating how China hosted Jewish refugees fleeing the Holocaust. And Chinese state media has spread conspiracy theories about Jews, including claims that Jews control most of the money in America. While anti-Semitism definitely spiked after October 7th, it was already rising on Chinese social media in the years prior. In 2021, a study found that anti-Semitism on TikTok was surging more and more each year. With the Chinese government's control over social media and the lack of protections for freedom of expression in China, this trend looks to some like government-sponsored anti-Semitism. But when the US government called out China for letting anti-Semitism run wild on social media, China hit back, calling any such claims baseless and slanderous accusations. But the episode reveals something interesting, because it wasn't Israel accusing China of anti-Semitism. It was the US, which starts to explain what's really going on here. Okay, so China is constantly trying to gain more influence over global affairs as a counterbalance to American influence. When the US aligns itself with one side, China often throws its support behind the other side. Other times, China tries to insert itself in the middle of conflicts, aiming to replace the US as the world's mediating superpower. So when war erupted between Hamas and Israel, and the US backed Israel, China was left with the other side of the conflict. Hamas, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the rest of the gang. Then, seizing on the widespread unpopularity of Israel's war against Hamas, China shaped an anti-American, anti-Western narrative, portraying the US as the main body responsible for driving the war and for enabling destruction in Gaza. Meanwhile, China rushed to portray itself as the responsible adult in the room, organizing conferences to reconcile the various Palestinian factions, leading international efforts to condemn Israel, and demanding an immediate end to the conflict, with Israel being the only one who actually had to make any compromises. Of course, as the death toll in Gaza grew, China's moves helped it cozy up to Arab states who were frustrated with US support for Israel. And simultaneously, China was also intensifying its ties with Russia and the Islamic Republic of Iran to further strengthen the anti-US bloc. All of this makes it look like China isn't just on Team Palestine, but is the coach, the manager, and the star player, which made China's next move all the more surprising. A little over a year after October 7th, China appointed a new ambassador to Israel. And the new ambassador seemed to be in a rush to mend ties with Israel. Around the same time, China's foreign ministry took the unusual step of acknowledging that the reasonable security concerns of Israel need to be paid attention to. It was one of the first times that China recognized that Israel had any legitimate concerns in the war started by Hamas. More recently, the spokesperson for China's embassy in Israel even published an op-ed in an Israeli newspaper explaining why China-Israel relations are healthy, stable, and yielding fruitful outcomes.
You are a good salesman. You got it in you, man.
The spokesperson noted that throughout the war, about 20,000 Chinese citizens continued working in Israel, and while US airlines stopped flying to Israel, a Chinese airline kept flights going. China's new ambassador to Israel insists that ties between the two countries remain strong, and China is still pushing greater economic ties with Israel and sees economic ties with both Israel and the Palestinians as a path to peace and regional stability. It's a nice sentiment, but does it outweigh their support for the Islamic Republic of Iran, their silence on Hamas atrocities, their free pass to anti-Semites on social media? Let us know which team you think China is on.